Hello again, traders, and welcome back to the Pro Trader Network. In this training video, we're going to talk about score trading. Well, what do I mean by score trading? We have a trade plan and a set of rules we use when we engage the market. One of the challenges we have is consistently applying those rules when we see a confluence of our indicators and price action. By assigning a score to each one of those events, we can begin to consistently evaluate each occurrence the same way every time and determine if we have a qualified trade signal. We're going to start off, traders, with a question. How do you determine whether or not your trade plan and trade system is giving you a qualified or a valid signal for a trade? We have to have a set of rules to evaluate whether or not we have a confluence of events and indeed have a trading opportunity. But how do you know the strength or reliability of that signal? A consistent way to evaluate a qualified signal from our trade system is to assign a value to each one of our rules. After backtesting, traders, we can evaluate our rules and evaluate which confluence of price action and our indicators give us the best signal, and then we'll decide which signals we should take and which signals we should ignore. This will eliminate any subjectivity and emotion from your trading decisions, and we'll get into that in just a moment. Let's talk about your trading plan and trade system. Any solid trade plan has to be based on rules. We know the market is unpredictable and we know that anything can happen. So we have to be the constant in the market, and that's why we have to develop rules and boundaries to interact with the market. As we observe price action and our indicators alert us to a trade signal, you have to look at your rules to determine whether or not you've built a case to enter the market. By going through a progression and scoring our rules or scoring a trade, we can decide which signals give us the highest probability and which signals to ignore. We're going to give the trade signals that have the highest confluence of our indicators the highest score when we backtest. The reason we do that is the higher the score, the higher probability of the trade. So when we backtest, traders, we're going to look at what we perceive to be the absolute perfect setup or the best setup, and then we're going to give that the highest score. All right, traders, in this example we have a simple rule set, and we're going to run through these rules to assign a score to create a valid buy signal. And we're going to use our if-then conditional thought process. So for rule number 1, we're going to say if price is above our trend line, then we score that rule a 1, and so far our total is a 1. If our RSI has closed above our trade signal line in our buy zone, which is between the 32 and the 68, then we assign a score of 1 to that rule, and because rule number 1 has been met and now rule number 2 has been met, we have a total of 2. Our third rule is if our signal candle is broken above and our close above our trend line, then that's an additional score of 1, so now our total is 3. Rule number 4, if price is not near any strong market structure, then we assign a score of 1 and we add that to our previous total, so now we've got a total score of 4. So that means that all 4 of our rules have been met, and now we have a valid buy signal. And of course, traders, we could apply the same scoring system to a set of rules for a sell signal to create a valid sell signal for our trade plan and trade system as well. All right, let's quickly review our conditions again. If all of our conditions are met for this particular buy signal, we say we have a 4x4 buy. Why? All 4 of our rules have been met in this particular example. So when we do our backtesting, traders, we've determined that when all 4 of these events occur on our chart, when we have a confluence of these rules and these events, our data shows us that we have a very high probability of success for those trades. So a 4x4 buy would be the absolute best buy signal we could get based on our trade plan and trading system. And we might find out that 3 conditions are met either more often or less often than when 4 conditions are met. Now remember, we've determined that a 4x4 buy is the absolute best signal we could get. If we determine that we're a more aggressive trader and we want to trade when just 3 conditions are met, then we would say to ourselves, we'll also take 3x4 buy signals, and that is 3 out of the 4 signals are met. I'm looking for 3x4 buys and 4x4 buys based on this particular trade system example. Why is this important? Well, it's going to remove emotions and subjectivity from our trading decisions. How? Well, our conditions are either met or not. If I look at a trade signal, if I have an alert on my chart and I look at the trade and only 2 of those 4 conditions are met, I simply ignore the signal. If 3 of those conditions are met, I take the trade. If 4 of those conditions are met, of course I take the trade. That's my absolute best signal. So, depending on your trading style, you can decide which score meets your requirements for a qualified signal. If you're like me and you're a very conservative trader, I would take only 4x4 buy signals in this example. So once I've decided to take only 4x4 buy signals, if I get an alert on my chart and only 3 of those conditions are met, I simply ignore the trade. I don't have to interject any emotion or thought or feelings of any kind. So traders, I run through my progression and I say, if rule number 1 is met, I give it a score of 1. If rule number 2 is met, I give it a score of 2. If rule number 3 is met, I give it a score of 3. And then I'm looking for rule number 4 to be met for that confluence to create a 4x4 signal. That's all I look at. Either I get a 4x4 or I ignore the signal. Either those conditions are met or they are not. Case closed. This is going to reinforce our reticular formation as we're only looking for particular signals that we consider qualified. Anything else, we simply train our reticular formation to ignore based on our repetitions. This is going to remove the fear and anxiety we have of, oh my gosh, I got an alert. What's happening? Do I pull the trigger? Oh no, what am I doing? What am I looking for? We know exactly what we're looking for because we've assigned a score to each one of our rules. And if the trade doesn't meet our specific score, it's not a valid signal. We simply ignore the trade. So you want to know the score, traders. Go back through your trade plan, traders, your rules, your trade system, and try assigning values to your indicator and price action triggers. I call your rules basically your indicator and price action triggers. If this, then this. That's a trigger for us to look at the next step of our progression or our next rule. You want to backtest all these triggers and rules to determine which confluence provides the best trade setups and signals. And as I mentioned in this particular case, I'm only going to take 4x4 buy signals. Those have proven to me in my backtesting that those are the best setups, the highest probability success in reaching my profit targets, and the best trades. And once you do that, of course, you're only going to take trades that you've determined meet your acceptable score. Everything else is irrelevant. Everything else you're going to ignore. Once you make that decision, traders, you must remember the signal is the signal is the signal. If you're a 4x4 signal trader, you need to take every 4x4 signal. And we know in trading we're going to have losses. But because we've done our back testing, we fully know what to expect. We're not going to be surprised. We've determined that even though we have a high probability trade taking a 4x4 or a 3x4 signal, depending on your trading personality, we're still going to have losses. We don't freak out. We don't cry. We don't whine. We simply move on, get prepared, and wait for the next valid signal. Traders, another huge benefit of score trading is that it keeps us going through the same progression in the same order every time we look at a trade. Remember that repetition, so important. Using score trading will have us use the same evaluation system for each trade. That's how we develop consistency when we engage the market. I think many of you will find this very, very helpful. I know I certainly did. When I was introduced to this type of trading several years ago, it really helped eliminate subjectivity and emotion from my decision making when looking at whether or not I received a valid trade signal. Now it's simply automatic. I know exactly what I'm looking for. I can determine whether or not I have a valid signal literally in a matter of seconds, and the trade either meets my criteria or it does not. If it does, I enter next bar market based on the close of my signal candle. If it doesn't, I simply ignore the trade. I'm patient, wait for my next alert, and then evaluate the next trade signal. Once again, great to have you back here at the Pro Trader Network. Keep those comments and emails coming. I really like to get those. I actually enjoy answering some of your questions, and I certainly hope many of you are getting some value out of the postings, the videos, and the information we're providing here. And always remember, traders, let's stay focused, follow our rules. We'll see you next time.